Hello and welcome, it's Deborah from Attic Lane and you're at day 10 of my 12 Cards of Christmas series where I'm sharing as many different techniques and creative ideas as I can pack into each of these short daily videos, so if you haven't already, please subscribe to make sure you don't miss anything. Today's card is actually 3 cards, but I'm going to show you how to make one of these and then how you can adapt it depending on what stamps you have in your collection. This is what I'm going to be starting with, including the cup of tea. I've got some masking tape and I've got a piece of hot pressed watercolour paper. Hot pressed simply means smooth, and if you want a textured watercolour paper, you would buy cold pressed. I'm using watercolour pens to put some colour down onto my craft mat, and I'm spritzing a little bit of water just beside it so I have the option of how much water I want to add. I've got a plastic bag which I'm using to pick up some of the colour from the craft mat and transfer it onto my watercolour card. It makes some nice splodges, and although I've already added a piece of masking tape across the bottom of my sheet of paper, I'm going to add a little bit more post-it note paper just to make sure I don't get any of my paints or ink into the bottom section of my card, because I want to use that later on for a sentiment. So back to the inking up, I'm adding a layer of green, and in between adding each different layer of colour I'm going to dry this. Hopefully this will stop my colours mixing together and becoming muddy. I'm cleaning off my craft sheet and my little bag, ready for the next colour, which is going to be pink. Again, a little spritz of water, pick up the colour on the plastic and then press it down onto my card. This is also a good way of allowing you to have as much control as you can over a splatty process. A little bit more pink to make it a little bit darker, and you can see I don't always go in and use that spritz of water. If I want the colour to have greater depth, I ignore the spritz of water and I just take the colour. I'm happy with that. I think that's a nice effect. So I'm removing my tape and you can see what a pretty design it leaves. The focal point for my card is going to be one of these cute little bears from a My Favourite Things stamp set, and I will provide links below to all of the supplies that I use in today's cards. So I'm going to ink him up using a hybrid ink by My Favourite Things, which won't run when I apply Copic colours to it. I'm going to put the cap for each of the colours that I use at the top of the little bear so you can see exactly what I'm using and where I'm applying it, and I'm going to leave you with some music and we'll catch up again when I finish colouring in the bear. My bear is coloured and cut out, and I've put him to one side while I work on the rest of the design for this card. I've taken a sentiment from another stamp set that I have, and I'm using a sentiment that says Merry Everything. I'm using Versacolour ink to stamp up onto my strip of black card, and now I'm covering that with white embossing powder, which I will heat set. And now that's ready to be added to the rest of my design. I've brought back in the background that I made earlier, and I'm adding the strip of black card just above the point where the card is white. So that's where I had my masking tape originally when I was adding the ink to the paper, and I wanted to leave that white so that it would make the sentiment stand out more. I've cut a little fishtail on the end of the sentiment and I've glued it into position, and now I'm adding glue to the reverse of my bear, and he will sit just on top of that sentiment. I'm going to do some matting and layering, so I'm going to take a piece of black card and I'm going to add a very thin border. But before I glue my background on top of the black paper, I'm going to go around the extreme outside edge to create a border using my clear Wink of Stella card, and you can see it shimmering. There is a splat at the bottom of the black card where I went a wee bit crazy with the Wink of Stella pen, but it's okay, it will be covered over. Now that means that although my border is black, it's not a flat black, it's got some life to it, it's got some shimmer and some sparkle to it. And I've glued the reverse of the black card, and now I'm lining everything up and matting and gluing it onto my white base card. I wanted to emphasise that you don't have to just do this with the stamps that I'm using, so I've put in a couple of extra examples where I use different stamps. So this one I backed it with a red border to match the Santa outfit, and the next one I used some tree stamps and I used metallic paints to create my background, and I think it gives a lovely effect. So now I'm going to leave you with a close-up of all three of those cards. I'm going to say thank you very much for watching, and I hope you will join me tomorrow.